Welcome back to this look at friends and families in those cold winter days of long ago. Some of my best friends in life were the pups of my youth. I don't know if a dog is man's best friend, as the old saying goes, but I know that a dog is a boy's best friend. That phrase has its genesis from a court case, Burden versus Hornsby, that began in the fox hunting fields near Warrensburg, Missouri in 1869 and culminated in the state Supreme Court the next year. Charles Burden's favorite foxhound, Old Drum, was killed, and Burden sued Lon Hornsby for damages. Burden's attorney, George Graham Vest, won the court battle, $50 in damages, and the ears of dog lovers everywhere when he made his famous tribute to the dog. I thought you would enjoy this tribute to those best friends from the good old days. In his statement to the jury, Vest said, "The best friend a man has in this world may turn against him and become his worst enemy. His son or daughter that he has reared with loving care may prove ungrateful. Those who are nearest and dearest to us, those whom we trust with our happiness and our good name, may become traitors to their faith. The money that a man has he may lose. It flies away from him perhaps when he needs it the most. A man's reputation may be sacrificed in a moment of ill-considered action. The people who are prone to fall on their knees to do us honor when success is with us may be the first to throw the stone of malice when failure settles its cloud upon our heads. The one absolutely unselfish friend that a man can have in this selfish world, the one that never deserts him, and the one that never proves ungrateful or treacherous, is his dog. Gentlemen of the jury, a man's dog stands by him in prosperity and in poverty, in health and in sickness. He will sleep in the cold ground where the wintry winds blow and the snow drives fiercely, if only he may be near his master's side. He will kiss the hand that has no food to offer. He will lick the wounds and sores that come in encounters with the toughness of the world. He guards the sleep of his pauper master as if he were a prince. When all other friends desert, he remains. When riches take wings and reputation falls to pieces, he is as constant in his love as the sun in its journey through the heavens. If fortune drives the master forth an outcast in the world, friendless and homeless, the faithful dog asks no higher privilege than that of accompanying him to guard against danger, to fight against his enemies, and when the last scene of all comes and death takes the master in its embrace, and his body is laid away in the cold ground, no matter if all other friends pursue their way, there by his graveside will the noble dog be found, his head between his paws, his eyes sad but open in alert watchfulness, faithful and true, even to death." Dog may be man's best friend, but sometimes a man can be a dog's best friend. Here is a story of heroism marked by one man's willingness to lay down his life for his little girl's pet. In return, he earned a lifelong companion for his act of friendship.
When I was a little girl, my father and I always liked to go down to Benjamin Franklin Park to ice skate. Almost every Saturday morning from December to March, we would get up early, eat a big breakfast, and then, with our skates slung over our shoulders, walk the 1.5 miles to the park. I remember one day more than any of the others, for although I always admired my dad and knew he was a kind and gentle person, what happened on that day proved it forever. It wasn't very cold on Saturday, even at 8 o'clock in the morning. Since it was March, the sun was getting stronger all the time, but there had been a snowstorm the day before, so Dad and I thought that it would be a fine day for skating. Rob Roy, our gentle 7-year-old mixed collie, trotted along beside us, carrying the stick he always took with him, as if to make up for not having any ice skates of his own. We ambled along the familiar city streets, looking in the store windows and nodding to people we knew, until, after what seemed forever to a 10-year-old, the fields and trees of the park came into view. No one else was around when we arrived there, which made us happy, because that meant that we could do our tricks without being laughed at, and race each other from one end of the pond to the other. How good it felt to have the wind at your back and the cold, clear air on your face. I would push my skates as hard as I could to pick up speed, and then glide smoothly around the ice, sometimes skating backwards, sometimes doing figure eights or little jumps, and many times falling. Rob Roy would bark and try to bite our skates and chase us around the pond, but he soon learned that paws were useless on ice. When Dad would chase me, I'd laugh so hard I couldn't keep up the strength to escape, and when he did finally catch me, I'd hug him hard and think about how much I loved him. We were having fun like that on this day and not paying much attention to Rob, when suddenly I heard a crack and a splash. I looked in the direction of the sound, but couldn't see anything. Then my dad raced past me to the far side of the pond and stopped by a small, jagged hole in the ice. It seems that Rob Roy had gone to the other side to investigate something when the softening ice gave way beneath him. I hurried across to help, but Dad shouted, "Stay back!" My heart was pounding with fear as I looked for the dog, and then his head appeared through the hole. With great difficulty he tried to keep his head above the ice. From the hole to the side of the pond was about 50 feet, not too far to swim under normal circumstances, but the ice was too thick for the dog to break through. "What can we do?" I screamed and started to crawl to Rob. "Get off the ice!" my father yelled. "We'll get him out." I had heard of dogs saving people many times, but what I witnessed next was, in my mind, to repay the debt forever. My father threw off his winter coat and removed his ice skates. Then he ran to the edge of the pond closest to the dog. Before my startled eyes, he hurled himself onto the ice, which broke and plunged him into the freezing water. Again and again my father threw himself down, and then pounded the ice with his fists. "Hold on, old Rob. Just a minute, boy, and I'll have you out of there. I'll get you out, lad," my father's frantic voice shouted. The dog responded to the encouragement and kept struggling. I could hardly believe my father's strength of body and spirit, and wondered about Rob's strength, fearing he would soon go under. 20 feet, 10 feet. Dad could almost touch the freezing, frightened animal. Now my father's teeth were chattering as time after time he sank up to his neck in the water. Chunks of ice lay behind him as he carved a path to Rob Roy. Then, after what seemed like hours, he broke through. Treading water, my dad patted Rob's head and then slowly pushed the dog ahead of him until both man and beast lay on the bank. My dad, soaked to the skin in his heavy wet clothing, gasped for air. Rob Roy shook himself, walked over to Dad, and whimpering, licked his face. "All right now, boy. It's all right," my father whispered. I hugged Rob and kissed my father and thanked God 1,000 times that they were alive. We slowly started to walk home, but as the March wind blew around my father's wet form, we decided that it would be better to run. We had 1.5 miles to go, and I am still amazed that he could do it, but the time saved by getting home sooner kept my father from serious illness. When we finally reached our house, we fell gasping into the hallway. My mother was surprised to see us back so soon, and then horrified by the sight of my father's wet clothes. She made him go right upstairs to take a hot bath, and then question me about what had happened. As I was telling my mother the story, Rob Roy disappeared. We wanted to dry him thoroughly and give him a bowl of warm milk. We searched the kitchen, dining room, everywhere downstairs, calling repeatedly. Next we went upstairs, and there he was, lying in front of the bathroom door, waiting for Dad. When my father left the bathroom and went into his bedroom, Rob followed him and lay by his bed all night. The next morning the dog would not let my father out of his sight. Rob in the past had always stayed around me and had not paid too much attention to my father, but he never forgot who saved his life, and from that day until he died, Rob Roy was Dad's dog. It has been a long time since that cold March day, but whenever the conversation turns to friendships, childhood, or our beloved Rob Roy, I am reminded of a quote from the Bible. "There is no greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends.
Rex was a special friend to Charles Leiter. For 15 years, from Charles' adolescence to his adulthood, Rex was a constant companion. Travel back to the 1930s, when a pup changed a boy's life, as Charles remembers Rex.
He was born in 1932 and died in 1947. Rex was a city dog who was born on a farm. It seems that as we went out to do chores one morning, we found a small female terrier-type dog wandering around the yard. We could see that she was carrying pups and that they would be born soon. She was friendly, so we adopted her and kept her till after the pups were born. We later learned that the pups were a cross between a purebred rat terrier and a fox terrier. Dad had to dispose of them, of course, but he kept one as a pet for my 4-year-old sister, Vivian. My sister named him Rex, and he did become her playmate. She would run dragging a piece of rope, and he would try to catch it. The best game they played was with an old rag. My sister would wave the rag at Rex, and he would clamp onto it like a bulldog, shaking it as if trying to kill it. My sister could drag him all over the yard, but as he grew bigger, it was a toss-up as to who was dragging who. At times, if she didn't care to play and he did, Rex would pick up a rag and run after her, shaking it. Though he never got over playing drag the rag with Vivian, he also got interested in many other things, especially hunting. At hunting time, he was Dad's or my dog. If we'd stand a gun against the house or a tree, he wouldn't leave it. Shep was his mentor in the art of keeping discipline on the farm. Shep was a mature English shepherd dog who was established as the official boss of the farm. All the animals, and even the fowl, recognized his authority, having learned the hard way. But Shep had his own stories. This one is about Rex. The two dogs got along famously. Rex was a willing helper in everything Shep wanted to do. The only difference was that Shep was a farm dog, and Rex was a mighty, though small, hunter. When Dad or I picked up a gun, Rex would come running, and Shep would go elsewhere. One of Rex's first interests was helping me hunt gophers. Our hilly farm in southern Minnesota had more than enough of them. I often went out shooting them with my .22 rifle, and of course Rex was with me. It took him a little while to realize that I couldn't shoot a gopher with him chasing it, but after some scolding, he learned to stay with me until I shot at something. Then he would dash out to finish it off. He was very efficient at that. I had become quite good at shooting, and didn't miss very often. I didn't dare to miss with Rex along. He'd scold me with his disappointed reaction. I developed a method of chasing a gopher into a hole. Then I would lie down a short distance away. When the gopher soon stuck its head out, I'd shoot it. By this time, Rex had learned to wait by my side until I shot. Then he would almost beat the bullet to nab the gopher. Soon, he found that if I lay on my stomach to aim, he had a better view if he stood on my back. As soon as I fired, he jumped over my head and was on his way. Ever after, that was the way we hunted gophers. When autumn came and the hunting season opened, Rex and I were in our glory. We could hunt pheasants, rabbits, and squirrels. When I hunted squirrel, I took only the .22, but I took the shotgun for pheasants and rabbits. It didn't take Rex long to learn the difference. When I headed for the woods with the rifle, he looked for squirrels. He would sniff from tree to tree, and if one was in a tree, he just sat and looked up. He never barked when hunting, but if I shot and no squirrel dropped out of the tree, I had to face his downcast reaction. If I took the shotgun and headed to the cornfields, we hunted pheasants. If a rabbit ran away from us, he never chased it. He was after pheasants. We had several good pheasant years during the mid-1930s. They were everywhere. However, Rex and the pheasants had problems. He was so little he could sneak up on them, but he wasn't big enough to hold a bird down. Whenever I picked up a gun, Rex was always more than ready to go. One time, we wondered what he would do if I took a gun, then left without him, so we had to find out. I left, and Dad held Rex in the house for about half an hour after I left. In my half hour I went to a nice wood lot about a mile away and wandered around looking for squirrels. Dad was to leave Rex out at 8 o'clock, so I watched my time carefully. At about 15 minutes after 8, Rex was with me. Afterward, Dad told me that the little dog just sat by the door waiting to get out. When Dad let him out, he was off and running as if he knew right where to go. We often used his habits to play tricks on Rex. He never complained. I played the harmonica frequently, and when Rex was around, he would join in with every kind of howl he could make. He could make many. I've often wished I could have made recordings of our concerts. They were real, down-home country music. At home, Rex was busy with his duties as Shep's helper. One of the most amusing was chasing a young bull we had. In the cow yard, we had a wooden gate which wasn't very high. The young bull learned he could jump it very easily, which he did quite often. The animal never seemed to learn that Shep and Rex would be waiting for him. He'd jump the gate, and the dogs would take after him. If he tried to stand and fight, Shep would be nipping at his heels. And Rex, oh yes, Rex would grab his tail and hang on like a bulldog. For a while they'd go round and round, the bull dancing with its head down, trying to butt. Shep would be biting its leg, and Rex would be having a free ride hanging on his tail. When the bull realized it wasn't going to win, it would turn, run, and jump back over the gate. Shep would stop at the gate, but Rex went right on over it with the bull and dropped off later. I think he liked to make the jump. Rex also liked to go fishing with me. He wasn't too interested in the fish. When they flopped around in the boat, he just watched them. But he liked to stand in the front of the boat while I rowed. He acted like a little captain, pointing the way we should go. One of my tricks was to quickly turn the boat and row backward. Rex would walk to the back of the boat and sit on the seat as if it were going forward. I'd turn the boat again, and he would walk to the front. I would do this several times, and he would always walk so he could face in the direction the boat was going. He was lucky I didn't have a motor. Rex liked to ride in any kind of vehicle, especially the car. If anyone went to the car, Rex was right with them. If the car was open, he was in it. We had a '29 Ford coach, and he liked to lie in it for a nap. If we left a car window open, he would be in it, unless he was busy helping Shep take care of the farm. I would often leave a rear window open just enough so he could get in, and then watch how he did it. He was too small to jump up and in, but he would jump from the running board to the rear fender. Then he'd make a twisting jump to the window, try to catch the glass with his paws, and scramble in. If he missed, he would keep trying until he made it into the car. Whenever he rode in the car, which was often, his favorite stance was on the rear seat, putting his front paws on the back of the driver's seat. Quite often when I applied the brake suddenly, he would be dumped in the front seat with me. Some years later, I'd been working at a job in a distant city and seldom got home, but one year I made it during open season for small game. I decided to go out one evening to hunt partridge. Though he was then an old dog, I took Rex along to see if he could still sniff out a partridge. As I walked up the trail to the clearing, Rex did something he'd never done before. He stayed quietly behind me. In the old days, he would have been zipping all around me. When we got into the clearing, I did flush a partridge and dropped it with a lucky shot. At that, Rex came alive. He ran in front of me and down the trail toward the fallen bird. But instead of tackling it, he jumped right over it and ran on down the trail. I was astonished. I called, "Rex, come back!" But he never stopped. Soon he was out of sight. I stood and called for several minutes without seeing him or even hearing him bark. Then I walked up the trail across the clearing to the edge of the woods. There was no sight or sound of Rex anywhere. He was in the woods, and it was a big forest. If he didn't stop, he could have gone a long way. I stayed where I was and called with no result. As the sun crept down, my anxiety crept up. I didn't know whether to go search for him, even though I had no light, or to go home and get Dad and some lights. As I couldn't decide what to do, I just stayed there and called again and again. Twilight descended. The shadows of the trees around me were disappearing. Anxiety became alarm. I called as loudly as I could. Suddenly, a little black and white shadow came staggering down the trail. The little dog tottered to me and lay down. He was exhausted. I've never been happier in my life. I knelt and petted him as he lay there. After several minutes, he started to move. I finally managed to cradle my gun and the dog in my arms and carried him back to the car and home. I realized this was our last hunt, and I was glad it ended happily. Not long after that, while I was away on another job, I got a letter from my parents. They told me Rex had gotten sick. One morning they found him stretched out on his bed. He'd taken his last sleep.
Jeannie Potter hoped a dog might be the answer to her juvenile dilemma of what to do with food she just couldn't seem to swallow. It was better than her father's solution to mouth-watering foods.
Have you ever been forced to eat boiled baby onions in a cream sauce? I mastered the art as a child. With an onion on the tip of my tongue and a big gulp of water, that slimy sucker slid down my throat with almost no taste. 2 glasses of water took care of the onions. Another glassful helped me consume the fried liver. While refilling my glass at the supper table one day, Mom said, "Jeannie, you drink too much water. I think maybe we should see the doctor." I stared at her in utter dismay. "Nonsense, Mother," my dad said with a smile. "God put water on this earth because our bodies require it. Water purifies us. Let her drink all she wants." I don't think I ever loved my father more. Cleaning my plate at mealtime was a law in our home, and without water to flush down some of the miserable stuff, I believed I would die for sure. However, with plenty of salt and water, even beef kidneys weren't too bad. Once the stench left the kitchen and the door on my mind slammed shut. But I often wondered about my father's arbitrary ideas. Hot dishes were favorites of mine. We rarely had them because Dad always said, "They look like something somebody already ate and couldn't digest." His freedom to eat only what pleased him without having to water it down made me resentful. However, my good health was important to my parents. It was the process that was so pitiless. Long before candy-flavored chewable vitamins came on the scene, I received a daily dose of cod liver oil. "Pinch your nose and open your mouth," Mom said, "and you won't even taste it." She was right about many things, but not about that. The smell infiltrated my nostrils, and the putrid fish taste lingered for hours. Even water didn't help. I vowed that no child of mine would ever be subjected to so many unpalatable substances. In voicing my complaints to my girlfriends, I discovered that I wasn't alone in my miseries, with one exception. Mary had a dog. She advised, "Skip will eat anything. He sits by me under the table and wolfs down every bit I throw at him." A dog! It'll be the answer to my prayers, I thought. But we can't have pets in our apartment. The idea, though, was exhilarating. A few months later, I couldn't believe it when Mom and Dad told me they had finally saved enough for a down payment on a house. "Oh, Daddy," I cried, "could I have a dog?" His face beamed with pleasure. "Well, I don't see why not. All children should have a dog. What do you think, Mother?" With no hesitation, she replied, "Oh, I agree. Jeannie needs a loyal companion since she doesn't have a brother or sister." It was decided then that I could select my own dog. Life had never been so good. Sugar was a year old and fully housebroken when we got her. She was a beautiful, mostly white Dalmatian with a pink and black nose. She was by my side constantly. But loyalty? She wouldn't touch boiled onions or cabbage. Thank God for water. As I matured, though, I recognized that those Great Depression years were hard on my parents. And I also realized that those hardships, shared by me, made me what I am today, a picky eater. True to my childhood vow, I never inflicted boiled onions, fried liver, beef kidneys, or creamed cabbage on my children. I prepared tasty, nourishing foods for them and fed them candy-flavored chewable vitamins. They were happy, well-adjusted children who didn't have to resort to devious means to clean their plates at dinner time. We could afford a wide variety of the more expensive meats and vegetables, and life was wonderful for them and me. Nevertheless, at the dinner table one evening, I noticed my eldest son toying with his food. "Rob," I said, "what's your problem?" With a sly look on his face, he answered, "Mom, could we get a dog?" I slapped my forehead, closed my eyes, and said, "Rob, eat your peas. A little water will make them go down easier."
Add a cold winter day to a father in a musty Santa suit. Throw in a couple of dogs bent on protecting the home from intruders. Do you know what you have? The day the dogs attacked Santa.
I'll never forget the Christmas season when I was 6 years old. My best friend Butch had been bragging to all the kids how Santa Claus always visited him on Christmas Eve, and that he even drank the hot chocolate at his house. All the kids were fed up with him, but he lived next to us on a little 40-acre farm, and we walked to school together. He told me how good he had been, and he was going to get everything he wanted. When I got where I couldn't stand it any longer, I hunted Dad up in the barn where no one else would hear us. I asked him why Santa didn't stop and visit with me, and that I knew I wasn't any meaner than Butch. Dad grinned, said he didn't think I should have any complaints about the things he had brought me in the past. I didn't look up, just dug my toe in the dust of the runway in the barn. Then I told Dad Santa has been real good to me, but I just couldn't stand Butch's bragging. Dad hunkered down, put his arms around me, and said, "Tell you what I'll do. I'll send Santa a letter and request that he sees you Christmas Eve. And you can tell Butch he isn't going to be the only one to see him this year." Christmas Eve, Dad and I went out and cut a big cedar, and Mother popped corn and helped us string the corn and some cranberries. Dad had bought a nickel package of icicles, and Jim, my older brother, fought about spreading them over the tree. Right after supper, Dad got up from the table and told Mother he was going over to Old Man Kiefer's farm. I saw him wink at Mother as he went out the door. Jim and I went to our room and got out the wish book, Montgomery Ward catalog. We were picking out all the guns that we would like to have when we heard the dog barking. They didn't sound like they usually did. A full moon was just coming up, and it was almost like daylight. At first we couldn't see what the dogs were barking at. Then we saw someone. He was kind of trotting along and looking behind. Old Duke and Skeeter were trailing behind him. They were whining, and every once in a while they threw their heads up and sniffed the air. But they were getting braver all the time. By now I could see it was Santa Claus. I screamed at Jim to help me stop the dogs. It wasn't any wonder they were carrying on so. He had the most disagreeable odor, like something old and musty, and his suit was all faded and wrinkled. But at least he had come to see me. By now I managed to grab old Duke by the tail. He was so big he jerked me off my feet, but I hung on anyway. Now I was crying and telling Jim to catch Skeeter before he could get a hold of Santa. The dog grabbed Santa on the heel, and he let out a bunch of words I didn't think he would know. The hair on Butch's tail came away in my fingers, and he got away and started for Santa. There was a big elm in the yard, and poor Santa reached up and grabbed it, but not quick enough. Old Duke took a flying leap and sank his teeth into the red breeches, which were 2-piece. He pulled them plumb off and proceeded to rip them to shreds. I looked up in the tree where Santa was perched, and he was pulling off his hood and top. He slung them down on the ground and said, "Oh, heck, I give up." The disappointment of finding out there wasn't any Santa couldn't equal how I felt about my dad for going through what he did to please a little boy. Besides, I got to brag to Butch that I was smart enough to know that there wasn't a Santa Claus.